Bro, that's crazy. It seems like everybody hates Belal Muhammad. You know the saying, a fighter's fighter? You know, there's a certain fighter that all the fighters love. Well, Belal Muhammad's like the opposite. He's like the fighter that every other fighter hates. A lot of fans don't like him. He's very polarizing. There are a lot of supporters, especially after he won the belt, which is great for him. You know, the sport needs fighters who are polarizing, where some of the fans love him and they'll get behind him no matter what, and a lot of the fans don't like him and they want to see him lose. I don't know, man. I think he's better than Leon. I think he's more exciting than Leon as a fighter. He's fighting more often. 4 months after beating Leon Edwards, he's fighting Shavkat Rakhmonov. We wouldn't have seen that with the former champion, right? Leon Edwards probably would have fought next year. Same time, point fighting from range to try to win a decision. At least Belal brings on the fight to his opponent, throws hands, wrestles, slams them, brings more excitement to his fights, while also talking too, while also trash talking his opponent, trying to be a little bit more charismatic than Leon was. Leon was boring all the way around, right? So even though Belal's not the most appetizing fighter, he's not like a favorite fighter, he's at least better than Leon Edwards. He's a more exciting fighter, and he's more exciting on the mic, and he brings interest to his fights, and he fights more often. But at the same time, Ilia Topuria hates him. He says that Conor Usman would be the one that beats Belal Muhammad. He calls Belal a fake champion. Easy work for Usman.
Belal versus Shavkat. But Belal, he's a fake champ. He's a fake. I think right now in the welterweight division, the one who will come back and will take the belt again, it's Conor Usman. In my opinion, easy work for Usman.
I don't know about that. Maybe Usman in his prime would have been a really good fight, but current Usman with no knees, I think Belal would beat Conor Usman by a decision. I think he would out-wrestle him in moments, beat him with volume in his boxing skills, and then use his strength and cardio as a way to win that fight. But Usman is the kind of fighter where even if he's out of his prime, he's still dangerous, right? He's still a very high-level fighter that can pose some issues for Belal. And another thing Ilia Topuria says is no finishes, no knockouts, no knockdowns, no girlfriend, no kids. Belal has never finished any man or woman. That is a 10-7 of all 10-7s. And I wonder, where did this whole thing start between Belal and Ilia Topuria? And then there's Conor McGregor. He hates Belal too. He goes and says, quote, "I love to crush my left hook into Belal's temple and take down the Triple Crown. I do it easily and fast. To think this bum is now a UFC champion with 0 knockdowns on his resume whatsoever is so bad. The UFC's most abysmal, 0 revenue generating fighter in modern history." That is so crazy, man. Well, firstly, I don't think Conor is going to fight. If you've seen like some of his interviews and him at BKFC, the Burger King Fighting Championship, I don't think this guy's fighting anytime soon. I think now Michael Chandler made the right move in not waiting for Conor, but he did lose 2 years of a training camp essentially, getting ready for Conor. But if Conor ever fought Belal would do what he did to Leon, but 10 times easier against someone like Conor, right? Way out of his prime, smaller, doesn't have the grappling, doesn't have the physical strength to fight with Belal. He does have a left hand. Belal sometimes gets reckless with his punches, but at his very best, Belal wouldn't give that same opening to Conor, knowing that Conor's only shot is the left hand. And Belal would have Habib in his corner too if they ever fought. But there's no way that fight would ever happen. Bro, even TJ Dillashaw is taking shots at Belal. Bro doesn't even fight anymore. Listen what TJ Dillashaw said about Belal. And he is only like reading a stat, but why? I wonder if he's going to fight again, but he's going to have to really get off those, whatever's making him look like Chad Mendes.
There's a stat that I saw after the fight is that Belal Muhammad's got 4 hours and 17 minutes and 38 seconds in the cage of the UFC and has 0 knockdowns. He hasn't knocked down anyone in 4 hours and 17 minutes.
I'm not gonna lie, that is a crazy stat. Even his TKO win against Sean Brady was a standing TKO, which is not a bad thing, right? And he doesn't have to be a knockout artist, right? You don't have to be KOing fighters to be great. Has there been another champion with a stat like that? Over 4 hours in the octagon and never scored a knockdown. What about Georges St. Pierre? Georges St. Pierre had a lot of decisions, so you know, that's a lot of octagon time, but he did knock down Thiago Alves. Dang, even GSP? What about Dominic Cruz? I mean, Dominic Cruz has to be higher than Belal, right? He was Pillow Hands Cruz. Let's see here. Okay, Dominic Cruz beats Belal. 4.5 hours without a knockdown. But that is if you include the WEC. But we're talking about bantamweight Dominic Cruz. That's what we're comparing for Belal. And it's nearly the same. Okay, so Dominic Cruz, the longest fight time without a knockdown out of any champion from the WEC and the UFC. And all of this trash talking just exploded on Belal right after his fight got announced with Shavkat, which honestly is a very good thing for Belal. Because if Conor and Ilia Topuria, who's leading into his fight with Max Holloway, one of the biggest fights of the year, if they're talking about Belal Muhammad, it's going to bring more fans to watch Belal's fight, either to see him win or lose. And if he can win against Shavkat, the polar opposites are going to grow. There's going to be more supporters and more haters of Belal. And for him, if he could just win, constantly win, and he doesn't lose to anybody, right? He gets a lot of title defenses, beats some great fighters during his reign, people will eventually start to say that Belal is actually just a really good fighter, man. Happened with GSP back in the day. GSP was very boring the second time he won the title. And during his reign, a lot of fans did think that GSP was boring. Until after we look back at his legacy and we're like, yeah, he probably is the greatest of all time. Which I do think GSP is the greatest fighter of all time. But that bar is so high for Belal to reach. He's not even close. And I don't think he would ever become the greatest welterweight ever at all. It's way too early to be talking about that. He won the belt at 36 years old. Unless he can get 9 title defenses in the next 4 years, there's no way he's reaching GSP. Now, can he reach Usman's legacy? It's doable, but unlikely. I think he has a potential to surpass Matt Hughes. Usman seems kind of unlikely, and GSP is nearly impossible for Belal Muhammad. But watch. It's happened to every single welterweight champion. As soon as Belal gets a couple wins, Joe Rogan and all the commentators and every mainstream MMA personality is going to be talking about how Belal is greater than GSP. He's a better wrestler than GSP. No one's better than GSP at anything in welterweight. Like, none of them are. He's the most well-rounded fighter we've ever seen. He's the best at almost everything out of any welterweight champion you could think of. He's a better wrestler than them. He's a better striker than them. He's a better grappler than them. Higher fight IQ than them. There's not a single welterweight champion in history that matches GSP in anything. Do you know how crazy that is to think about? There's not a single aspect of GSP's game than any welterweight champion was better at. For any welterweight that wants to beat GSP's legacy, I feel bad for them because the bar is raised so high. And it happened so long ago too. GSP was a champion over 10 years ago, and still no welterweight has even come close, and probably never will come close. But the thing about Belal Muhammad is, if he beats Shavkat, I don't think another contender can beat him until he's out of his prime, because Shavkat has the best style to beat him, and I don't see any other fighter having a style to beat Belal. They don't have the wrestling defense, they don't have the cardio, they don't have the strength against him. Shavkat at least is a very good grappler, has great submissions, dangerous in the stand-up, big guy for the weight class. If there's anyone that could beat Belal, it is Shavkat Rakhmonov. But then I look at Jack Della. He gets wrestled to a decision. I see Usman. In his current form, I don't see him keeping up with Belal in a 5-round fight. Right? I think eventually he'll slow down a little bit, and I don't think he has the knees to defend the takedowns. And then you look at Leon. Another rematch would be another Belal win. Ian Gary versus Belal. I mean, that's not even a fight worth even talking about. Sean Brady, we saw that fight, and Belal TKO'd him. Brady's one of the best fighters in the weight class, and Belal TKO'd him. The only knockout he has, and it's against one of the best fighters in the weight class. He ain't beating Belal. It's all up to Shavkat. And if Shavkat wins that belt, the UFC would be so happy because he is so marketable, and most of the fans love him. Never gone to a decision, finisher. But if Belal wins, they can, I guess, hype him up in a different way, knowing that a lot of fans and a lot of fighters don't like him. They can make him like, essentially like a villain to most of the audience. And here's the thing, Belal talks too, right? He has fun with it. He's talking to these fighters as well, telling them that they're all trash. Dricus du Plessis will lose to Islam Makhachev, and he'll beat Dricus and all this sort of stuff. Like, at least Belal talks as well, you know? Can you imagine this was Leon? No one would be talking about welterweight. Ilia would not be talking about welterweight. Dricus wouldn't. Conor wouldn't. None of this attention would be on the welterweight division if Leon Edwards still had that belt.